Okay, while James is getting the slide up, I just wanted to point out that in our living room this evening, we've also got a piece of art, okay? Well, two pieces actually. So there's this one, and you're welcome to come up and look at it after, or even now. And then we've got this one, all right? Now the reason I brought these in as part of our decor, you will see these are supposed to be African art. And there's been a lot of talk about, the influence of white people, black people. And so I thought this is really, really apt. This is a sculpture by a Kenyan lady called Maggie Otieno. And this is a piece of art by another Kenyan called Geraldine Roberts. And if you look at it, it is the same African face. All right? And here I am trying to answer the question that was left hanging at the last session, for those of you who are here, and that was asked by Ngatia. And Ngatia put out there, do it like you. Yeah? Do it like you. He was saying, why are we always trying to imitate? Do it like you. Now, the question I'm putting at the beginning of our session as we start is, but who are you? But who are you? And what this art is doing is it's helping us to ask that question, because Geraldine is a white Kenyan who has taught Kenyan artists for years at the university. And so when people produce art, and it's authentic art, okay, what is that art? So that's one of the questions, and you can come up and look at this after, because and I didn't buy them together, and I hadn't even noticed that they were the same face when I bought them, okay? But this is one of those questions I would like to ask about identity. Now, just before we start, and just before I introduce the panel, okay, James, what's happened to my slide? Okay, we were so prepared. James had a slide up there of Prince, all right? And we've been playing Purple Rain, for those of you who know. I'm a Kenyan born and bred, and I grew up on Prince, okay? That's why I was blasting Prince, because the question I was asking myself, given that we're looking at arts and culture and authenticity and identity, and all the big questions that were raised in plenary by Yvonne this morning, is that big question of identity, okay? Now, for me, and we're looking at, of course, arts and the creative industries, okay? How we develop a creative industry out of the arts. Prince, for me, was one of those first artists who rebelled against the slavery, okay, of the multinational or the conglomerate or the big company. Okay, and the picture that you're looking at up there on that black screen that James is struggling to put up for us is Prince with slave emblazoned on the side of his cheek, okay? And after that, he will show you a picture of Prince again, okay, fighting for his name, which is owned by Warner Brothers, okay? But this time, because he cannot use his name that he says he was given by his mother, he becomes a symbol, okay? Whether it's the love symbol, whether it's the ankh, whether it's the Christian cross, he becomes a symbol, all right? And all this is, of course, the quest for identity. And ultimately, then in the last picture that you will see when James manages to get it up, is Prince in a mask, okay? And he did this when he did a song called Count the Day, which we're not going to play, but which you can Google. And, with this, he was, ultimately, the invisible man. I don't know what he wanted to portray, the invisible man, because he's been erased. He's been erased. And of course, the fight was that he was so creative. He was so prolific. Prince's music library, he could put out an album every year. And this was not good. This was not good. Okay? So here we'll be talking about creativity being policed, creativity, doing all manner of things. But for me, I thought Prince was a wonderful example because it shows, for me, aspiration towards diaspora. When I was too young to even know what diaspora was, we just danced to Prince. I don't know what the affinities were. Yvonne, we had not even examined what they were, but we just knew that there was something that spoke to us. Now, if Prince played rock, and you'd say Africans do not do rock, there we were. All right? So those are some of the questions that I'll be looking at. Now, the second reflection I had came out of the keynote this morning. And this is reflecting again on the creative and cultural industries. And Yvonne referred to this, that this week we lost a national leader and statesman and cultural icon. And this is Raila Odinga. Now, the cultural fanfare and national outpouring were punctuated by his signature soundtrack. I don't know if any of you is from Kenya and can remember what that signature soundtrack is. Jamaica Farewell. It was Jamaica Farewell. Harry Belafonte, Calypso. I mean, this was on the national stage. And I don't know how many people reflected and wondered why this cultural icon in his village is being buried to Harry Belafonte. But I just wanted us to reflect that Harry Belafonte's Jamaica Farewell was the first LP to sell over 1 million copies. LP is long play record for those of you who don't even know what an LP is, because some of my students I know always say, yeah, that's way back in the day. So a long play, he was the first, okay, in the US to have this. But this was our national soundtrack as we buried a cultural icon that the art knew no borders. The art knew no borders, okay? So I wanted us to think a little about these things as we go. And then just going back to Prince, James, could we have Prince, please? And just going back to Prince briefly, I wanted to say that in the 90s, for the Kenyans, we had a girl band. We had a girl band called Musically Speaking, okay, based in Nairobi. Oh, we'll get everything but Prince. But we had a girl band based in Nairobi called Musically Speaking. And one of the things that they did do, okay, was that they visited Prince's studio in Paisley Park in Minneapolis, all right, as part of a cultural exchange. Thank you, James. One of our panelists today, what was I going to say about one of our panelists? No, anyway, she's not here now. But they visited as part of this. One of our panelists today, who unfortunately is not here, what they look at is exchanges, cultural exchanges, music exchanges today, all right? And I was just throwing us back that back in the 90s, these young women visited Prince's studio already. And of course, for me, the interesting thing was that they did visit courtesy of the US State Department, something I do not think might be possible today, but that's how it happened, that it was actually official, that we did have these exchanges arranged by governments. Now, my name is Garnette Oluoch-Olunya, and I will be moderating this wonderful panel, and they're going to help me reflect on some of these issues that I've raised using those illustrations. And James, you can show us the other Prince pictures, just the symbol, if you can. And then the last one, that was Prince, or that was the artist formerly known as. And then the next one, please. And that's him performing. Now he's totally, covered his face in the mask. Fighting business. Okay, yeah. All right, and so what I'm going to do is I'll start from, my far left. Far right. With you, Binkady, and if you can just tell us your name, where you're from, and just very briefly what you do, and then we'll have the same for my other two panelists. Yeah.
First of all, hello. I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Kenya, and I'm very grateful also for the invitation and the opportunity to talk with you today. My name is Binkady-Emmanuel HIÉ. I'm from Paris, France. I was born and raised in France, in the southwest of France, from a French mom and a Burkinabe dad. My dad is from Burkina Faso. I was trained as a lawyer. Then I shifted to work in arts and culture because it's been my passion, especially performing arts. My father is a professional musician from traditional instruments from West Africa, balafon, djembe, etc. So I grew up around music. I grew up around performing arts, dance, circus, etc. And I really wanted to, have my job focus on this industry. So I switched jobs and I ended up working at the Paris Opera in fundraising. And I left the Paris Opera in 2020. Maybe I will be able to come back to the circumstances during the conversation, but I left the opera in 2021 to start my own company that is aimed to tackle the racial issue in France, and especially to have the black conversation in France. And I have 3 branches of activity. First branch that is about consulting with companies. So I work as a diversity and inclusion consultant with organization, and I focus on anti-racism. I work as a talent manager, and I work mainly with black or Afro-descendant artists, mainly on image, so press, brands, PR, etc. And I also have like a more creative activity, and I work on developing artistic and cultural projects that highlight the history of black and Afro-descending people in the French history.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sylvie Njobati. I am from Cameroon. I am an artist, a filmmaker, and I also curate different forms of art. And I do this in order to enhance dialogue and conversations on very complex topics, such as the question of restitution, decolonization, slavery, racism. And I'm also an activist, and my activism for the past 5 years has been focused on the restitution of colonially looted heritage in Europe back to Africa. And so far... Oh, no. Okay.
They're common here. They live in the forest, so don't worry.
I'm also the founder of Regardless. Regardless is an art and culture organization with a mandate to promote, protect, and preserve different forms of artistic expressions and also cultural heritage at risk of colonial loot, climate change, armed conflict, and other disasters. And I'm also a mother. And my daughter is 8 years old, and I'm a proud mother.
Thank you. Okay, Kim.
I've been walking with my face held to the sun, weight on my shoulder, a bullet in my gun, and I've got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can, where I am, what I am for my people, till the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night. That's why I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. I see freedom flowing, calling me to answer. Keep on keeping on, I can feel it in my bones. So I don't start with music because I'm a singer. I do that. My name is Kim Poole. I'm a performing artist. I start with music because it's essential that I bring the vibration of my ancestors into the room. That is my musical libation. I'm the daughter of Jacqueline Kaiser. I'm the granddaughter of Mary McClary and Dorothy Pettaway. And I'm the great-granddaughter of Alvinia. And for me, as a black woman that was born in Baltimore, at some point in that story of my lineage, we lose track of names, we lose track of locations because of the great disruption and the great what we call Ma'afa, disruption in the Swahili language. And so for me, I'm here at this table as the founder of the Teaching Artists Institute. Culture is the new currency. Culture is the new currency. And we're here because we understand that our culture is not music, it's not art, it's not visual arts, it is everything. The artists and the culture creatives, we define reality. And if we don't fully understand cultural reparations, this conversation is null and void. This festival is null and void. All of the cases that we have at the United Nations, the financial compensation that some of the countries around the world have already received is null and void. Without cultural reparations, all the money given to us will be fed back into this system of capitalism, and we will be in the same position at the bottom rung in a generation. Without cultural reparations that teach us our value system and teach us how to work cooperatively, teach us how to heal from the inside out. Without the artist and the culture worker defining reality for us, reclaiming our heritage, we will never fully calculate the reparation we owe ourselves. And so I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you. Some of the questions we'll be reflecting on, and like I started, just thinking through these things, is that the creative industry itself, as we were told very powerfully this morning, has not been immune to things like violence, inequality, and the suppression of certain voices. In other words, the arts can be a means of liberation, which is, I think, what Kim has just demonstrated very powerfully. Right. They can also become spaces where the voices and works of Africans and Americans of African descent are marginalized or silenced. Okay, so our panelists will take us through. And we've already started very powerfully what it means to repair through arts and culture. Okay, how this world can itself, be repaired. And I'll give you some guiding framework just so you speak to some of these issues. And I'll start with Binkady-Emmanuel. How do you think artistic practice confronts the erasure and silencing of slavery and colonial injustices in different contexts? Can you just help us think through that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this question is very interesting because I'm talking from a diaspora point of view. I told you I was born and raised in France, so also that's the testimony that I bring today, different from maybe what we heard this morning from people from the continent. And as a French person, France is a country that has a very violent history with the African continent through slavery and then colonialism. And it's a country that has a very hard time also in including this history in the national narrative. And I think that the artistic institution can also be some places that embody this heritage and that need also to be exposed for this and to work on the heritage, especially when in institutions like the Paris Opera with these performing arts, you tell stories on stage with people that embody some stories on stage. It's also a way to get further from this colonial background. So I want to start here my presentation with my experience from the Paris Opera. Actually, I told you I was trained as a lawyer. Then I worked in fundraising at the Paris Opera. And I was working at the Paris Opera in 2020 when COVID happened. And then George Floyd was murdered in the US. After the murder of George Floyd, remember, there was this kind of global conversation on racism, on lack of diversity, on lack of representation in all different fields. And art and culture were not, ignored from this conversation. This is the moment that we chose with some colleagues from the Paris Opera, black people from the ballet company. So the Paris Opera, there is a ballet company of 150 dancers, there is a choir, and there is an orchestra. In the ballet company, out of these 154 dancers, there were at the time 5 black dancers, actually 5 light-skinned mixed dancers, which also brings the issue of colorism, but already so 5 black dancers. And with these 5 friends, people that I'm friends with, we decided to take this opportunity of this global conversation on racism to open a conversation about racism and the black issue within this very old institution. I don't know if you know, but the Paris Opera is one of the oldest artistic institutions in Europe. It was founded by Louis XIV in the 17th century. So it's an institution that is 350 years old. So we decided that, and the conversation about racism and the presence of black people inside this big house was a taboo. Like, it was not a question that was discussed. There was a lot of problems and also a lack of representation of black people. There is a lot of black people in France, and this institution was not representing what is the French society, and especially the Parisian society, which is a very multicultural city. So we decided to use this moment of mediatization of this conversation to open this conversation about the history of racism in this house. And we decided to write a manifesto that was titled De la question raciale à l'Opéra de Paris, about the racial issue at the Paris Opera, that was actually summing the different structural problems that this house had with racism, and especially black people. So it was a matter of the representation in the works, in operas and ballet, the way non-white people were represented in sometimes a very stereotypical representation from works that date from the 19th century, for example. It was the matter also of hair and makeup for black artists, that the staff that was taking care of hair and makeup in the house was not trained to take care of black skin, black hair, etc. It was the matter also of the tights, of the dancers that were supposed to be of the skin color, but actually match the white skins and not the black skin. And that was also the matter of the representation. As I said, France is a very multicultural country because of colonialism, and Paris as a city is a very multicultural city. If you go out outside of Paris in the metro, in the street, you can see people from very different origins. And the different artistic formations of this house, the ballet, the choir, the orchestra, were not a good representation of what the Parisian society is. So that was actually our moment to open this conversation. It was 5 years ago. You can guess that it was a big moment for the institution, because that was like a conversation that was silenced until then, and it's opened the conversation, and it forced the opera to start finding solution to be more inclusive and also to portray non-white people in a less racist way. So I think that's, for me, a good example of using an artistic institution to question a country, because the Paris Opera has a special place in France. It's one of the oldest cultural institutions of the country, and it's also one of the most renowned internationally. You have a lot of people, tourists, come to Paris to go to the Palais Garnier to see opera, etc. And ballet itself, as a form of art, is a very French form of art. It was invented by French people in the French course in the 17th century. So by addressing this conversation and by making sure that this conversation is started by the people that are in the center of this conversation, so that the black people themselves choose to be vocal about this in this institution. It was, for us, a way to start a national conversation, because it was not a conversation inside the opera, but then it was a media coverage that was kind of national and started, a global conversation about what is French art and where are the non-white French artists, and do these institutions have done the work on decolonizing in order to be more representative of the general French society. So I think, for me, that was the first example that I had to give. And another example is that I think especially performing arts are a very good way to tell this kind of alternative stories that you cannot find in the curriculum. I left school now for maybe 2 decades, so it's far away, but I have no memories as a young French person of black people in my history books, So you learn the French history through this very white lens, through this very masculine lens, as if, black and brown people have not contributed to the history of this country. And this is a problem. This is still a problem. And I think nowadays, and it's very exciting, and not only in France, but I have examples from other European countries such as Sweden, arts, cinema, performing arts, books, literature can be also a way to trying to tell some stories that you will never learn at school. I give an example. One of the artists that I managed, his name is Guillaume Diop. He was part of the small group of black artists that I wrote this manifesto with in 2020. Guillaume is mixed. His dad is from Senegal. His mom is French. At the time, he was the youngest of the group. And after the COVID, his career took a turn, and he was promoted as a principal 3 years ago. So it's the first principal is the highest rank in the hierarchy of the Paris Opera Ballet. Like Misty Copeland in ABT. I don't know if you know about Misty Copeland. So Guillaume was promoted in 2023 as a principal dancer at the Paris Opera. He's the first black person being in this position in the history of the house. So of course, this has been and this will be a topic for all of his career, to be this kind of symbol of role model of representation of a more diverse France. But what I say is that, of course, Guillaume can get political in his image. So he does a lot of interviews, etc., where people ask him what it is actually to be this role model. What are the problems at the opera with being black, etc. But I think one of the way that he finds the more convenient and the more exciting to change also the narrative and to shake a bit the conception about ballet is actually to participate to work of art that's going to shift this narrative. He was, for example, he was part of this ballet that was created last year in Sweden with the Royal Swedish Ballet, just national ballet company in Sweden. And the ballet is called Gustavia, and Gustavia tells the story of Gustave Badin. Gustave Badin was a man that was born in Africa, probably on the western coast, Senegal, probably, in the 18th century. He was enslaved. He was enslaved as a young kid, and then he was deported to this Danish colony in the Caribbean. And as a teenage, he was captured by the Danish to be sold as a gift to the Queen of Sweden. But the Queen of Sweden was against slavery, so she decided that she would adopt this kid and raise him as her own child. So he was actually part of the royal family, and yet the same age of the older son that was meant to be the future king. At the time, so it's the 18th century, at the time, Paris and the French art and culture were really like the epitome of nobility and chic, etc. So all the European courts tended to copy, what was the trend and what was the fashion in the French courts. So young aristocrats were trained as ballet dancer. Ballet was part of the education. You had like sword fighting, music, etc., and ballet, because it teaches you to have a posture, to have elegance and grace, etc. And so this kid that was now a prince, a black prince of Sweden, was taught ballet from very young age and became actually a ballet star in the very early ages of the Royal Swedish Ballet. So it's the 18th century in Sweden, and you have a black ballet star at this time. And so this production, Gustavia, was all about this story, and they picked Guillaume to play this young prince. And for the Swedish people, this story is not known. So if you ask most Swedish people, they don't know about this black prince. They know about his brother that became a big king that is very renowned, but this black prince, they don't know about him. And I think that this ballet, that actually was a huge success in the box office, was a great way for Swedish people to discover the hidden part of their history that they would never learn, at school. And I think it's also a good way because it's like a non-confrontational debate. It's not a debate. You just put a story like this and let people question, why is it the first time that I heard of this story? Why didn't I learn about this story before?
Thank you very much. I think we'll leave it there for a minute, and move to Sylvie so she can also tell us a little bit. And Sylvie, I wanted to just frame your ideas, your thoughts around the role of the creative industry in erasing and suppressing certain voices and representations. I don't know if you can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, of course. How much time do we have?
Sorry. A lot of time. Okay. 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
You have like 5 minutes.
Okay, sad enough. Okay.
Yeah. Because we'll come back, at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, the creative industry played a key role in enhancing colonial propaganda. But sadly enough, also the culture industry or culture was weaponized during the colonial times. And of course, we were suppressed in different ways. We were told that our black hair, our black natural Afro hair is not beautiful, which is part of our culture. We were told, no, your objects are too fetish and too barbaric to be around human existence, and so we will take them to Europe and put them in our museums. We were told that our languages were not fit for speaking, and we'll have to adopt either French, English, Portuguese, or any other language. And so there are several ways that the creative industry was used by the colonizers to suppress the African people. And a key thing to note is that they used it to attack our identity, because they know that if our identity is stripped off, then it opens the Pandora box and access to other spaces in our lives. And it also gives them the chance for extractivism, to extract from Africa. But one thing that I really find interesting is that the same creative industry has potential to enhance conversations on reparations, to redress the same problems that were caused by, the creative industry. And I take an example of film. Film is a very powerful means of communication. And as I worked with a couple of museums in Germany to unearth African heritage that is stored in German museums, you realized how much film was used as a propaganda tool. There were films that were produced which were basically showing how primitive Africans were, and I think that they still think that we are still primitive in this age that we speak. So there were films that would show how barbaric our objects were, but then also these films no longer serve their purpose in this time. These films have been used as evidence in the process of truth-seeking and truth-speaking. And I give an example of a film that we found in an archive in Germany. And this film basically was produced by a colonial military personnel. And in the film, he had spoken a lot about how some people where I come from, how they looked more like monkeys. And he also mentioned how many people he had killed and how he looted objects. He burnt down the palace and looted objects. Now, fast forward to 2023, this film, though at the time held power to protect colonial acquisitions, this time it played against them, because that's what we used as evidence to then say the context of acquisition of objects that were looted in colonial context were violent, and it's documented in this film. And so we make a case for restitution. One thing I also wanted to mention is that when you look at the creative industry, how it has evolved over time, you would see that the creatives are using it to really counter the narratives that were built during the colonial times. And the power of the creative art can be seen today where we are. We all can testify to this festival, which is an artistic intervention. We can all testify to how much it speaks and opens conversations. It opens dialogues. And so when we talk about suppression of, people, voices by the creative industry, I don't like to focus on the negative. I like to look at how we can turn that into our favor. There is another example that I would give today. When they were playing the drummers, they did mention that the drums were sounds of resistance to colonialism. But not only that, but also a call for reparations, a call to action to each and everyone that was there. That is a form of creative art. And we are using it today as artists to speak to the communities, to speak to people, to speak to even policymakers, to say in different ways, in a universal language, because art is a universal language, to say that we will keep resisting, because I believe that resistance is a form of repair. Because if you do not resist, no matter how much you try to repair, then that it keeps coming back. And so look at how we all pulled up today. Most of us are wearing some sort of an African, it's either the fabric, either the jewelry, either shoe, some sort of fashion that represents our culture. It may not be 100% indigenous, but it has Africa. You can see Africa in everyone that is here. It's part of resistance. It's part of resisting the suppression that was done using the creative tools. We are saying that you think our hair is barbaric, but we can pull up to it We can pull up anywhere with it, and we are comfortable and we are fine. So when we look at the creative industry, I think that the power it possesses to inform people is also very important. I was just having a conversation with one of the participants, and I was saying that you cannot repair what you don't know. And I think that is where the creative industry comes in really powerfully. It is an inclusive way of having dialogue. It is fun. We were all dancing when drummers were, playing. You really get to participate in change making without feeling the pressure on you when you employ artistic means to conversations. And I think that for the creative industries, we also have other forms of art that can really inform beyond spaces, beyond organized spaces like this. We have different forms of art, such as graffiti, where in some countries and in some communities, you would see graffitis on the wall that is a way of unsuppressing, let me put it that way, the voices of the communities. We also have street art. We've had different sort of performances. We have street theater. And these are very creative and fun ways of opening conversation. So I believe that the creative industry has that potential. Despite its contribution to suppressing during the colonial times, but this time the creatives have taken it upon themselves that this is our time, and the same tools you used to suppress our voices, we will use the same tools to speak out to people. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sylvie. I had a moment this morning when I was getting dressed to come here, because I really did not see the memo about putting on something nice and colorful. And I looked in the mirror and I thought, I'm African. Yeah. I'm African. Well, that's who I am, So again, having to perform Africanness, for me, that is one of those other big questions I keep asking, even though I will say that I do have my token piece of African jewelry that's made by a Nigerian artist who lives in Nairobi, fantastic jewelry maker. But these are some of those questions. Why do I have to perform African? I just am. But I'll leave that question there and go to, very, very quickly, to Kim. Kim, I want to frame your thoughts a little bit. The role of culture in linking historical injustices with present-day struggles. Help us think this through.
Yeah, that's a heavy question, linking historical injustices to present day. Artists have always been the bullhorn of truth. There isn't any point in our history where we weren't on the front line. But as a Black woman from the historic diaspora living in Baltimore, everybody's an artist. And I see that same reflection when I'm in South Africa, and at any moment they can break out in song and become a choir. At any given Sunday, everybody sings. We are the rhythm people. In the beginning was heart drum. With this vibration, we gave rhythm to the world. On this beat, we sing life. And so I think first it's important that we always start with definitions. I feel that when we think of the artist as the expert, that's really a European concept, that the artist, or let's say the museum, right? From Greek mythology, the muse, it has to flow. And only when you're in the museum and the muse flows through you, can you tap into that vibration and elevate and connect. But the truth is that we are the rhythm people. We are vibration. We are the connection. The embodiment of every one of us in here are the same vibration of our ancestors. It takes me back to the Negro spiritual. When I think about the songs that my ancestors sang in those fields, they're just as relevant on Sunday morning today, any given Sunday. I think the rhythm is what grounds us, is what reminds us of that continuity, that continual connection. We are past, present, and future. When I talk about how we redefine, that is a part of the cultural reparation. We don't even realize the depth of the malady, how we define our language, our concepts of time and space. They're all Eurocentric. They were all created for us. We're even in the context of this conversation, using tools that were given to us. Time for the African person is past, present, and future, all at the same time. My ancestors are present. The future is now. Our reparative future, we are creating it in this moment. This was in an idea in somebody's mind, and it existed then, and now I'm sitting with you, and people are already pollinating and cross-pollinating what's next. And so when you ask me how is the artist class, connecting past injustices to, our current situation, I just want you to know that our past situation and our current situation is the same situation, and the same artist, Miles Davis, when I think about my musical lineage as a performing artist, that comes out of me. Sometimes when I'm on stage, I feel like Nina Simone. You can't tell me, different. And so I think it's important for us to, they would say decolonize, but I'm going to do what you did by listening to the woman on the stage earlier. She said, it's not decolonize, it's apocalyptic. I said, listen, we need to start defining for ourselves and knowing that art is not something that the specialists, there's an artist in each one of us. Even the inception of new ideas is creativity. And the moment that you decide, I'm going to live in my authentic self, I'm going to be the authentic African I was born to be, whether I'm in Baltimore or in Kenya, you're already the embodiment of that connection. It was never severed. And the artist class, or those of us invited sometimes on stage to talk or sing about it, I hope that we're that bullhorn of truth. And we're using our platforms and influence to always carry the storyline.
I almost feel inspired to sing, and I'm thinking Janet Jackson, and I'm thinking we are all of the rhythm nation.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much. But I think very quickly now, because time just seems to fly, I will turn to the guests here, so that we have a bit of a conversation. If we could have a few questions or comments, before we go back to the panel to kind of wind up these ideas around, around art. Does anybody have a burning question? Oh, okay, yes. Hi, do you need a mic? No. Who can? Oh, I can take this to them. Okay. Just take this mic.
There we go. Initiative. Let's go.
Okay, thank you so much. I love this conversation, and literally that it's focusing on the skills and the ability of the artists to really change the narrative. In Africa, you realize that they almost have no regard or no respect to artists. Perhaps they don't value them, and they don't think they are so much of importance in this struggle. How best can we, and yet we've seen that in all circumstances, let me say that it's always artists who take the forefront to advocate against the injustices happening. So how best can we try to convince, especially the policymakers or politicians, let me name it politicians, that they should have a position at the forefront for the artists. And again, to the other hand, we are having a challenge amongst the Africans on the continent. I don't know if it's due to the media or whatsoever, that the media so much publicizes, advertises, and uses the performances of the artists from the other race at the expenses of ours. And we eventually find out it's eroding and taking away of our culture, and we eventually start imitating and believing and behaving like what we watch. To an extent, nowadays, our children, our siblings are being raised by the TVs and whatsoever. So how best can we develop our local or African-centered industry to influence our thinking as a race? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Do you have any other questions?
So I just want to say thank you so much to all the people in the artist industry.
They are really doing as well, and it's only that they've never been recognized, but I just want to salute all of them. They entertain, at the same time they educate. I'm talking as a policymaker, and I think what we are missing in this space is the policymakers. When I look there, at the front there is no policymaker who is really going to take the conversation to the highest level. I think as we get the communique after tomorrow, I'm very sure it's going to reach the relevant offices so that there's some implementation which needs to be done to make sure that we realize the mandate, or rather the objectives and the goals of this Wakwetu Festival 2025. Going back to the national government and the county governments where I work, I want to believe that when the white people came, first of all, they distorted our education system, and both the formal and the informal education. And currently, we are doing CBE, that is not even ours. It is a borrowed curriculum. And I want to believe that if we are doing CBC, why don't the curriculum developers give us arts and culture in the curriculum?
Okay.
It is just a proposal. Secondly, culture is a devolved function. You realize that both the national government and the county government don't take culture serious, and they are not funded. So even getting resources to fund activities related to arts and culture is a tall order. Thirdly, we have religion.
Okay.
As you organize for your event,
and I'll ask you to just keep it brief.
Bring religious people still to the table so that we get this conversation right. Okay. Last but not least, we need to take this conversation to the grassroots level. Let it become a movement there, because culture is our pride as African. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. I think just to reassure, and because I'm the one who comes from Kenya, just to reassure the last speaker that I also sit at the Go Down Arts Center, where they're involved at the moment on working on cultural policy for Nairobi, and that we have actually been involved. And yes, there's no money, but we work with partners. And I think after Yvonne's intervention this morning, one is very conscious of everything, but we work with partners. And we have done, with UNESCO, some work on, and our national NatCom, some work on the ground to prepare for the devolved function of culture, which of course is embedded in our constitution, albeit in one line, culture is the foundation of the nation. But I think we had one last question there, and then we'll come back to...
Thank you so much. My name is Bitbox Askutam, representing TAI, Teaching Artist Institute. My question is about the culture of the language. The language we are speaking, African languages, are being hated in most of the schools. And then bringing up suggestion of Chinese language, the French language, and also there's another language. So once you speak the language, you have to speak your mother tongue language, you have been given a punishment. This was happening way back, it's still happening right even today. Because I'm a teacher, a music teacher, I live in Uganda, but I'm seeing this. And to me, as a teacher, I don't need to beat a child who's speaking a mother tongue language, because the child cannot explain any sentence in English. So explain in local language, like Luganda language, I get to hear that faster. But to me, punishing a child because speaking a local language doesn't make sense. Like you speak Swahili, and everyone like, no, you have done a big mistake. We need to embrace our mother tongue language, Swahili, Acholi. People here in Kenya, they speak raw language, Chapadola. These are our mother tongue language. Meaning in our schools here, let's abolish the other language, foreign language in our system. Let's embrace our language. Be proud of speaking your mother tongue language. This could make a lot of change, but even today, there's still a lot of forces of us speaking local languages, speaking English languages, other language, foreign language. If this is like too much insane, it will kill us. And then that's why it's very hard today to find a family where a child can speak a mother tongue language or a father tongue language. It's very hard. They're all speaking a little bit of Swahili. Unajua leo, I want to be somewhere, and then unajua mama leo tunaenda nini kwa last town. make everything in Kiswahili, brief Kiswahili. So don't bring more other words in English.
Okay.
Speak fluently Kiswahili. Speak fluently Luganda, fluently Acholi. Make it like your own language. Make it like your own language.
Thank you so much for the blessing. Thank you. All right, and I think I'll come back. Okay, I'll take one last one and then come back to the panel. Sorry, I have to get this to you. Oh, thank you. It's on.
Thank you. I'll make this very brief.
Thank you.
I'm a psychologist by training and also a traditional healer by training in Ghana, Senegal, and Nigeria. I am supremely concerned about those members in our community who are artists, whose music and dance really are not necessarily taking us to a higher ground. And yes, the academics can come in with all of their analysis of the subtext in there, but our young people aren't necessarily going to that subtext, and they're emulating the values that are therein. So how do we work with that so that we don't lose critical elements of our culture because they've been co-opted? Read It's Bigger Than Hip Hop and go find the 10 Commandments of hip hop. It's quite alarming.
All right. Thank you. This is not working. Thank you. And so I'll come back to the panel now. You've got the questions, and you can just speak to them very, very quickly, if you don't mind, as you summarize as well. So.
You want me to go?
Oh, you want to go first? Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on the issue of language, and I appreciate the speaker who mentioned that we should be proud of our local languages. And again, it takes us back to how culture was weaponized by the colonizers, right? But also, I think a lot of it also has to do with how Africa is positioned in the global ecosystems, either by ourselves, by the politicians, some of whom, most of them lack the willpower to do so. But we really need to start reflecting on Africa and a unified language. I think that is power. Because right now, in Cameroon, for example, we have more than 230 languages. And so when the conversation comes in about, okay, we're decolonizing the educational space, we're trying to decolonize the country, we need a unified language, then the question also is, whose language is it then should we build on, right? And if we build on that local language within the country, now when you step out of Cameroon and you come to Kenya, it's Swahili. You get, so there's some of these undertones that I believe we need to really start having conversations at a larger scale about language. Language is a very, very powerful tool. I always say, as a Cameroonian, I have the opportunity, I don't know if it's an opportunity anyways, to be able to speak and understand French, not so well though, but English as well. But also in our systems, you realize that I study in English from primary school right to university, but if I have to get admission in the United Kingdom, then I need to write IELTS or TOEFL, which I find really weird because this is a language that has been imposed on me. I've studied in this language from the beginning of my childhood to adulthood. And so I think it's also about global positioning. It's also about global positioning in the politics, in the global landscape. I think our African leaders, and I was very glad when Yvonne really stood up to the AU and really questioned what the AU is doing, or questioned some of these position papers that are flying everywhere, I must say. I think I found that really very, very powerful, because the African Union also plays a key role in, synchronizing the efforts of the different communities and countries. I don't see them at the central point of trying to help the situation. But I encourage everyone that your mother tongue, like he said, is your first language. I know we do that a lot. They ask you, what's your first language? You say English. Please reclaim it and say your mother tongue. That's something that I always do. And I know it landed me in trouble in some places, but that is also part of asserting our culture by being proud of our language, by connecting to our origins, by connecting to our roots, by connecting to our culture. And language is a key part of that culture.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think we'll have you next. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. I mean, talking from the diaspora, we have this similar also problematic that our parents or grandparents that immigrated from Africa sometimes are reluctant to transmit the language because they're afraid that it's going to be something that's going to block, the child, And I think it's kind of ironic that when you have young child that speak French and German or French and English, it's like a little genius. But when you have young child that speak French and Arabic or French and Bambara or Wolof, this is seen as something, so like different contexts. But we also have this where I really regret that I don't have the language from my father's ethnic. So I know how to play some traditional instruments. So it's like I'm still satisfied with the transmission. But I think this is also a point for me to conclude, and I think maybe it's a reach from you, the first question, but I think when you speak about culture, and also developing through culture and arts our own stories, our own identities, I think it's also important to explore the diversity within this Black conversation. This is African and Afro-descendant conversation, because we're still in a very globalized world with some very strong cultural imperialism from the US. And I think actually us in France, Black people in France, if you go in the street and ask people randomly to cite one or two names of Black people that have made history, they're going to say Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Angela Davis, Malcolm X, the Black Panther, but they would be unable to cite Black French, Franz Fanon, Aimé Césaire, I don't know, there is plenty of them. And I think that's also our struggle within the Afro-descendant and African and Black community, name it as you want, to also sometimes just take distance and focus on what's our history, because the history of Black people in France is not the same the history of African Americans. And also it's also very interesting to know the American culture, but it's also interesting to dig into our own narrative because they're closer to our identity. And I think for me that's a challenge, in this kind of Pan-African global reflection about Africans and Afro-descendants, is like we are united by the same motherland and the same story and sometimes the same violence and trauma, but we also live in spaces that have a specificity, and we are not a monolith, we're not a block, we are also a great diversity of stories. And I think it's important that we do not disappear behind the African American culture that is very inspiring, but it's not the only one. And I think that's the same. That's why I think maybe it's a stretch from one of the questions, but also the African identity is specific and needs also to be developed through arts. And Black people in Europe also have a specific story. It needs to be developed and to be also as, spread and also as developed as the African American history.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, Kim, I'll leave you for last. So I'll just speak and then I'll give her the last word. And I just wanted to reflect and connect back to some of what was said on the stage earlier. And I kept thinking of Professor Somet Yopokoreta, who said, he referred to Cheikh Anta Diop, and in France in 1949, made a proposal for a thesis, The Cultural Future of African Thought. The cultural future of African thought. And of course, I don't think it went, I think you went to the Sorbonne, it didn't go anywhere. But when he talked about patriarchy and matriarchy, then he got his PhD. But, the idea of thought, that people are thinking that artifacts are connected to thought systems. They don't just exist, even when you're talking about repatriation. These are some of those threatening ideas that Yvonne was putting out this morning. But I didn't want to finish without mentioning Sir Hilary Beckles, from the West Indies, because I know he has made a spirited fight over time and with the AU for what's it called? Not repatriation, restitution. There was a meeting in Durban, and it was referred to earlier, by the gentleman from the AU. And at that meeting, he insisted they had to talk about restitution. And the AU decided no. They were focusing on the African Renaissance. And he said that was the great Durban betrayal, and he's been fighting since. And for me, in 2025, that we are here talking about what he has been campaigning for so long, I really think is saying something. Lady, the mental health of our young people is one of the huge subjects right now, precisely because of what you're talking about, rubbish in, rubbish out. It's a huge problem, and I don't know if Kim will speak to it. But I think I will leave it there and ask Kim to actually share the last reflections and actually close the session, and to thank you all very, very much for your participation and for us beginning to think about some of these huge, huge cultural issues. So thank you very, very, very much. Kim, you can respond to, pardon?
Kim just gave me permission to say something. I really wanted to react
1 minute.
Yes, 1 minute. I wanted to react to her point of we need to have religious leaders here. That is very true. I have had the opportunity to visit objects looted in religious context, let me put it that way, by the Catholic Church, and you cannot even begin to think about it. And this looting was also accompanied by crimes that were committed by the Catholic Church. And you would see in one of the presentations, I think was your presentation, you would see the complicity of the church in some of these colonial crimes. So I strongly believe, and if there is any organizer here, to really make sure that the church is involved in these conversations, because they're also going to be repairing. We will be asking them to pay reparations of every form. Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you said that. This is a lot for me to download, but I'm going to try to connect. Starting with Stephen, he said, why aren't artists valued? Why aren't artists considered as serious people, especially on the African continent? And that is a part of the trauma too. But I want to talk about things holistically. Sometimes in our education in a Eurocentric context, we've been taught that it's this or that. It's black or white, it's up or down, it's the lowest common denominator. That's how we're trying to break things down. But even the way that we think, you have to learn how to learn. Even the way that we think, our thinking systems are Eurocentric. The African worldview teaches us synergy. It's how do these things fit together? Both things can be true. Yes, we're, not serious people. And yes, we're very serious people. Yes, they keep us from decision-making tables. And then in the US, when they're looking for a token, they'll bring Nicki Minaj to represent one of the most serious issues in history. So yes and no. I think what is important with our work in the Teaching Artists Institute is that we're teaching our artists how to be bilingual. It means that you need to be proficient in your art, but this is a double work, and you can do it. My ancestors did this and more. You also need to be competent in the areas. And to speak in real time, just for the sake of this panel, I don't like the fact that in conversations they relegate artists, especially at a reparations festival that is focused on art and culture, in my opinion, to the hired help. We know the issues, and just to make sure for the record, we understand, and if you're in the audience today and you don't, the United Nations created, a basic framework for the right to remedy, and some of us just don't know the basics. Reparations means that we're asking for compensation. First and foremost, a check, right? And even though my organization says that culture is the new currency, that's an internal conversation. That's us with us. That's not our conversation that we're having with them. Martin Luther King said, I'm coming to get my check, when he was at the March on Washington. When you said, our leaders, and shout out to you, thank you for noticing the grind, but we see you, Frantz Fanon. And I want you to know that Shenk Akta Diop has shaped some of our connection to the continent, and that deep dive research that we've needed to connect us to Kemet and beyond when we think about civil
So we see you, friends, and we know what y'all doing over there, and we're glad that you see us too. Having that been said, when we talk about being bilingual, again, for the sake of this conversation, we said compensation is first. Next, we're talking about satisfaction. We're talking about restitution. We're talking about guarantees of non-repetition. I want us to get into it because so often artists are able to float because we can create and we don't have a strong foundation of the basis. But I want you to know the basis of the reparations conversation so that you can create in the context what we need. And so you asked, why aren't we taken as seriously? It's because we've been exploited. And it's also the malady that's within us. We've seen artists as not the serious people because we had to be jucking and shiving and somebody else's entertainment. And so if you didn't want to be the objective of someone else's objectification, if you didn't want to be their entertainment for the night, you said, I want to do something that's serious. I don't want people to see me as the hired help. And so I think it's important to always remember how we got this way. But there are a few things that I wanted to say. I'm not going to proselytize, but there are some things that our organization are working on that aren't abstract. Yes, we're talking about the issues, but I want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us, how to actually get involved in this work. If you're an artist in the audience tonight and you don't want to be not taken seriously, if you want to be taken seriously, let us help you learn how to do that. We were in the Vatican at the Roman Catholic Church. You mentioned the interfaith dialogue. We were there facilitating it. Artists are the facilitators. We are the MCs. We are the connectors. That vibration is real. And we took it African Liberation Weekend into the, I'm not going to call him the devil. Oh, did I just do that? It's too late. Right. We went into the devil's house and we had that conversation. And you know what I saw when I got there? I saw us. I thought I was preparing for a fight. I thought, I'm going to the Vatican. I'm going to go get our stuff. They have that Vatican Museum. If you've ever been to Europe, all of the best museums are in Italy. And out of all of Italy, the best museums in Italy are in the Vatican in Rome. They have collections so much they don't even put it on display when we talk about the Black Madonna, etc. And so I went there going to get our check, going to get our Black Madonna, talk about our restitution of our artifacts. And when I got there, you know who were the gatekeepers? It was us. Yeah. It was us. And so I realized that as a culture worker, the way I needed to be taken seriously in this work was not to try to be the attorney, not to try to be the financial analyst and determine what the value is that they owe us. Yeah, we can make songs about that, but our work as the artist class is to go to our people and remind them that it is not it's not devalued or it's not demonized if you celebrate or if you practice an African spiritual system. It's important for us to say that even Christianity is an African spiritual system. When we look at Ethiopia and the Coptic Church and Lalibela and Exum, we created everything, culture, and until we get back to this value system and this foundation, we will never survive in this system that exploits us. We need global financial reform. And when we say that culture is the new currency, it's because the artist class teaches us what is of value. And we have to hold the line on that. So Stephen, when you say, how do they take us seriously? It's our job to build our own table. It's our job to make sure that we are going to be that liberated zone, that safe space, because this system will fall. We're distracted. We're paying attention to Trump. We're talking to the French. And guess what? They're on the other side of that. They're paying attention to us. When I come from the U.S., I realize that we are forced to act. We're forced to do. We never get time to just sit back and think and study and ponder our solutions. We're never allowed the space to prepare. But we need preparation for reparation. And that is the role of the artist class. Because to really give us our restitution, to really rehabilitate what was happened to us, this apocalypse that happened upon global African people, that's a world remaking exercise. Every institution has to be transformed in order for us to receive our reparation. And when that happens, because it will, and our reparative future is happening right now in this moment, I want you to be ready to be able to manage the world's resources, because right now we're not ready. And it's the artist class, our role to get us ready. So thank you.
Wow.
Oh, but listen, you said you wanted a song.
Yeah.
And so we have some artists in the room. I'm going to defer because we have so many teaching artists from Tanzania, from Uganda, y'all stand up. Come and give them something. Improvisation. Yes, the imagination of the artist class is what's going to save us. Yeah. Most of us have forgot how to dream. We forgot how to be creative. We forgot what improvisation does. We've been taught to follow rules, and we follow rules too well. I want y'all to break the rules and be comfortable with that. So y'all go ahead and create something for the people and make it nice here.
Whoa, wow, wow, wow.
One team. DJ need sound in this microphone. Give me some sound.
Yep.
One team.
Check. Give me some bass. Ladies and gentlemen, where I come from, we be happy. And when we be happy, we sing. So we're just going to sing 2 statements. When I say Echibobo, you say Chirimunyumba. When I say Echibobo,
Chirimunyumba.
Echibobo,
Chirimunyumba.
Echibobo,
Chirimunyumba.
Jango Chirabe,
Chirimunyumba.
Jango Chirabe,
Chirimunyumba.
Okay, another one. When I say Jango Chirabe, you say Chicho. Jango Chirabe,
Chicho.
Jango Chirabe, Jango Chirabe. Okay, the rhythm starts. Give me the rhythm. Echibobo, Jango Chirabe. I don't see you clapping. Clap. Echibobo, Jango Chirabe. Echibobo, Jango Chirabe. Scooter. Jango Chirabe. Show us, brother. Yeah, man.